Le sprinkler techno.
Well, about getting consciousness in that, the only tools I've used, I think, for that are like Sonar Cube and what's the other one? Veracode. That's
Yeah,
the
so for
second one.
static code analysis.
Static code analysis, and
Yeah.
that I think gives you sort of an idea of what's to do in your code. The criticism I have of that, though, is if you run that on a legacy system, you get such a high number that at some point you go, we've been working with this for a long time. So I don't know, how do you get the people on your team to not only be conscious of it, because they'd be conscious of disaster, potential security disaster, but to actually think that they should fix it. That's there's a sort of a lax attitude that sort of builds. If you have a mountain, if I give you 279 security bugs and you've been online for like 4 years, then you'll go like, then we're okay. How do you get people to go, I think we could do better on this, and I think it might help our code?
So I would say the same way with any technical debt. Security debt is just like any other technical debt, right? And it's like having the credit card statement you never open. Once you open it, you gotta start to figure out a way to address it. And probably if your credit card statement's like $20,000, you don't have $20,000 hanging around to pay it off all at once, right? So you're doing like $150 a month, something like that. So it's the same thing. I mean, and you're right, like any of the security tools, I mean, SonarCube is security adjacent, I would say, so it does the static code analysis, does code checking. You can also put guidelines for code structure that you want to have custom. So it does a bit more and a bit, it's security adjacent. But it's the same thing with other security tools. If you run them against your stuff, you're going to get piles of data that you might even probably have no idea what to do with, right?
Exactly.
So in some instances, you need a security specialist or expert to come in and kind of look and weed through. That's where their expertise comes in place, right? Anyone can run the damn tools. It's not so hard, but actually configuring them to get the right stuff for your business model, and then actually going through and saying, oh, this is like a false positive, or this is okay, this is low risk, that's another thing. But on SonarCube or any sort of technical debt when it comes to, the code or missing tests, like automated tests, whatever, you gotta triage it and say like, okay, there's 1,000 issues here. Maybe we'll look through and find 10 that we really should fix, and the rest we're just gonna say, just keep it buried, and because you'll never get to it, right? So I think like that's the other part, is there has to be a realism around, like, you can't, it's what's the Voltaire, perfect is the enemy of good, I think is the statement, right? So it's always that balance. Now, going forward, what you want to do is educate the developers and the teams, right? And other people in the org, by the way, right? Like the product owners and the managers and everybody else, to understand the importance of security and how to take those risk-based decisions, right? Because you're not going to do everything. And then just some general practices, like just including, like I said, something that does your free open source scanning, like when it pulls out through your Maven files, looks at all of the open source you're including, and basically right on your screen as a developer in Eclipse, you get a box that says, oh, this is like a GPL license, this is approved in your organization, and this is, oh, good for you, you took the latest patch level. All good, green. Or, you've included a copyleft license, this is big red mark. Maybe you can, and from there you could even, if you wanted to go further, you can block a developer from integrating that code, right? From doing a Git pull, stop them from doing it based on, hey, so just even that, some of those tools that you shift left with raises awareness, even if you haven't even told the developers what you're doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. But again, technical debt, there's no magic to technical debt, right? Either you invest in it within the teams, or you put a side team together to invest. I don't like that model, but you put a team to chip away, but leave it.
My problem with DevOps and DevSecOps and sort of these separations that people make is that they view them separately, right? So if you have technical debt call it what you want, like the code is not is not correct in certain aspects, and you have security. That's two pools that you need to pull from, and people, I don't think, understand the subtleties of maybe the relationships between the two and these ideas. So it's very difficult for me. I'm not good with people as a general rule, but for a manager, if you're going to have to explain to him, this is technical debt and this is security debt, I think you're just creating a wall in his mind that now he needs to manage these two things. And
it's all technical debt. It's all technical
exactly.
debt.
I agree.
I really like that you place them all in the same bucket, because to me that's what it is. Anything that is not production ready or production quality level ready, and regardless if it's defects or missing automated tests or security requirements that are not met, you name it, all that to me is technical debt.
And my last thing that I dislike about the tools, but it's not the tools' fault. The tools are doing what they're supposed to do. The last thing, and this is true of SonarQube and Veracode, is that people see lists and they will try to destroy the lists instead of fixing the problem. So if I'm going to go with SonarQube because I've seen this more. If somebody can find technical debt like bad variable names, he will go all over there and change all the variable names, reduce what SonarQube reports, and view that as a success. Same thing can be done in security. If you go in security and you say, we're going to boost every version to the latest version, I would think maybe 2/3 of that effort is for no reason, right? And I think tools sort of reinforce those bizarre metrics that people view as important, like your code should have 90% coverage and unit test coverage, that annoy the crap out of me, where you just want actually to get
90%. It's 100. It's 100% coverage.
It pisses me off to no end, because people start chasing the number instead of fixing the actual problem, which is maybe think more about what you're doing, right? That's the underlying message of 2,000 things to fix in Veracode, is think a bit more and think of upgrading your versions and think doing it every day instead of doing it on that month and then having a drop like this in the numbers and you go like, yeah, we've succeeded. You haven't really succeeded, because 6 months from now, you're going to be going back up and you've not learned anything.
Yeah. I want to do a little pause because you just brought something that's very interesting. And it goes back to what Darlene was saying about everything being in symbiosis, you know, when you want to change those version to be the latest version, some people would argue that, well, we need to retest everything. But then when you have test automation and you have continuous integration and you have your pipelines and everything, well, you know, keeping up to date doesn't cost you as much because you have automated so many things. So everything is in symbiosis. It's a great example. And I just thought of that while you were mentioning the version example.
Well, it goes back like to what I had said at the beginning about putting the code into production as quickly as possible, but with quality and security, right? If you take it from that aspect, putting the code in quickly means that you have levels of automation, right? It doesn't mean, of course, you don't automate things that are either way too expensive to automate. And there are things that you might choose, we can't test with that system, right? Like it's going to cost us too much to mock it or whatever, right? But the thing is that that's kind of that goal that you should be going for. And like JP, with like what you're saying is, and this is often a problem with anything we measure, right? Anything we kind of measure that you can put a number to, like, or a KPI to, is that we lose sight of what's the goal of what we're measuring versus that number. And I think that tends to be like a management problem, right?
It's a vanity metric.
Exactly. So like if you have 1,000 things in SonarQube and you cut out 900 of them by doing something that really was meaningless, that might look good to people who don't understand what you really did, and you still might have 100 issues that are actually the more important ones. Exactly. So again, it's always the same thing, right? It's always about what are we doing that is adding value, and you have to triage the stuff and prioritize it, and everything won't make it. then that's the reality, right? We would love to live in a utopia where everything gets built in from the beginning, where we have like, you know, a 6-month like runway that you put in all the CI and you get everything perfect for the developers, and then they start and they all are you know, full stack developers doing their own IAC, like everything always green, you know. And that's a utopia that doesn't exist, because we need to put features into production, right?